So for the purposes of this assignment, we're going to look at 4 pieces. First is we're going to look at an article called School and Home Connections and Children's Kindergarten Achievement Gains, the Mediating Role of Family Involvement by Galindo and Sheldon. We're going to look at a chapter from a book. The book is Home, School, and Community Collaboration, Culturally Responsive Family Engagement. We're going to specifically look at Chapter 7. We're going to look at another book by Joyce Epstein, School, Family, and Community Partnerships, Preparing Educators and Improving Schools. Specifically, we're going to look at Section 3.2. And we're going to look at a final article called Parents, Social Networks, and Beliefs as Predictors of Parent Involvement by S.B. Sheldon. Complete APA citations for all of these can be found on the printed document submitted with this assignment. So starting off with the Galindo and Sheldon article, the first thing these researchers discovered is that greater family involvement in child's home education results in greater achievement at school. This is probably not a surprise to most people that work in education. It essentially boils down to the point that the more involved a family is at home, the better off a child does in school. They also found that greater family involvement at school results in improved academic performance of the child. So building off of the first point, the more that a family is involved in a child's school environment, the better off the child does. The researchers also found that beliefs held by parents about their students' educational futures are significant predictors of student achievement. This fits very well into the well-known idea that high expectations result in better performance. The researchers also found that schools with strong, proactive approaches to engaging families experience greater parental involvement in student education. Again, this probably seems like common sense. The more that a school works to go out and involve families, the more that families get involved. And overall, the researchers reached the conclusion that increased level of parental involvement is associated with increased student performance. So whether parents are involved at the home academic life or at the actual school, it will all result in increased student performance. Moving on to Grant and Ray. This book is very interesting in that they offer several suggestions for people working with students and families involved in various struggling situations. At first, they talk about working with people, students, and families in poverty. And among the suggestions they offer are focusing on the individual characteristics of the people and the family rather than focusing on generalizations about those in poverty. They suggest seeking common ground between oneself and those people living in poverty. So as a teacher, common ground would be that which is in the best interest of the child. And they suggest focusing on providing positive school experiences for students and families living in poverty. The authors move on to talk about working with those experiencing homelessness. The authors suggest that when working with students and families experiencing homelessness, a strong effort be made to set up after-school programs, that a strong effort be made to suspend judgment about those who may be experiencing homelessness, as well as understanding the complexity involved in being homeless. Being homeless is not just about lacking a place to live, it's about a lack of access to multiple resources. The authors then move on to talk about working with those in violent communities. They suggest that when working with students who live in violent communities, teachers and other professionals help them develop conflict management skills, that individuals work to learn to spot the signs of the effects of violence on children, and that teachers do not tolerate bullying or harassment in their classroom. Overall, they argue that positive behaviors should be modeled for those that live in a violent community. And finally, the authors offer suggestions for those working with those experiencing chronic illness, either the student themselves or in their family. They suggest making sure that all medical records are up to date. that if the teacher is responsible for maintaining any supplies for a chronically ill student, that those supplies are always full. And they suggest making sure to respect the confidentiality of all medical issues. Turning to the section by Epstein, this is a very interesting section, a very interesting writing. They look into something that is often ignored in research, and that is they take a look at the open-ended responses provided by teachers on surveys. Most often when doing research, the need to have hard quantifiable data means that open-ended responses are ignored. But in this case, they actually compile those responses and examine them. And in this particular case, they specifically look at teachers' responses to questions revolving around parental engagement and the challenges and the values. So the first thing they focus on is the issue of teachers' time. They focus on teacher open-ended responses to questions about how much time is involved for the teacher attempting to involve parents in education. And the first thing that they note is that most teachers do recognize the value of it. That yes, it takes time on the teacher's part, but that there is value because of the payoff. However, several teachers do in fact mention the challenges involved in attempting to involve parents in education. One teacher specifically mentions that she is no longer willing to give her time freely to try and involve students' parents. She argues that she has her own family and that she can only give so much of herself. Moving on, the authors look at responses involving the parents' time. So teachers were asked to respond to the issue of parents' time when it comes to parental involvement in schools. Many teachers suggested that parental time alone at home with the students should be free from academics. That if a child is going to spend all day at school, when they go home with their parents, they should not be burdened with academic activities. Others, however, feel it's extremely necessary for students' personal time to have academic activity because it results in positive changes and positive performance in the classroom. They next move on to talking about the position of a parental involvement coordinator. Several schools have people on staff specifically designed to increase parental involvement. Many teachers find a high value in having someone on campus specifically designed to drive parental involvement. Others find it has a very low value, and it depends on how the individual acts in that position. One teacher in specific said that the parental involvement coordinator on her campus is a total waste of our federal money. The conclusion seems to be that having the position is not enough. It is the kind of work that is done by the individual in that position. And finally, the authors examine some comments revolving around the dilemma of parent involvement. Most teachers recognize the challenges but say it is necessary. So some teachers seem to feel caught. They know that parents have limited time, they know that teachers have limited time, but they also know that it's necessary for student success. Turning to the final written piece by Sheldon, this research is very interesting in that it involved looking at the size of parents' social network and how that relates to parent involvement in academics. So the first thing the researchers did was look at the size of the parental social network and how that relates to home academic involvement. And what they found was that the larger a parent's social network is, the more a parent is involved with their children's learning at home. They then conducted the same examination on school involvement. How related is the size of a parent's social network to the parent's involvement at school? And they found the same result, that the larger a parent's social network, the more that parent is involved at their child's school. They reached the conclusion essentially that the size of the network matters. They hypothesized that the larger a social network a parent has, the more social capital that they have, and that social capital translates into student success and performance. The authors wind down by cautioning about drawing causal conclusions based on their research. The way the research was conducted, there is no way of knowing if the size of the social network leads to more parental involvement, or if more parental involvement results in having a larger social network. So their research here is only correlational, it's not causational, or causal, excuse me. Finally, after doing this research, I've reached some conclusions about understanding community and parental involvement and partnerships. First thing I conclude is that they are very complex. There are many, many elements involved. Teachers' time, parents' time, resources at the school. And we need to respect that as we look into these types of issues. It does seem to boil down to, though, that more is better. The more involved parents are in their child's academic life, the better off the children do. The more involved that community elements are in school, the better off the schools do. And I found it interesting, differentiation of instruction is a popular topic in education right now, and it appears to apply to this issue as well. One size does not fit all when it comes to driving community and family partnerships. We have to differentiate the methods used based on the needs and the conditions of families and communities. And finally, I wind up with a definition of partnership. For me, a community or parental partnership is any practice that involves families, businesses, or other community entities in the operations or activities of a school and or the academic life of the students. Thank you very much.